Hello and welcome to our virtual classroom. My name is Denise Plemmons and I am the Commercial Recycling Specialist for Athens, Clarke County, and I am here to talk to you about recycling. But before we jump into recycling, I did want to talk about the other two R's that often get forgotten but are just as important or sometimes even more important than recycling, and that is reduce and reuse. So reduce. What does it mean to reduce? Reduce means to have less of, right? So when we're talking about our waste, what are some things that we could do to reduce our waste? First off, just say no. Just say no. Do you need it? When you go shopping, make sure you have a list so that you're just buying what you need. Occasionally you may get a few things that you don't need, and that's okay, but keep it in mind that you are reducing your waste when you say no to things. If your freebies are given out, do you really need to add that to your life? Once you get home, are you really going to use it, or is it just going to go in the trash? And once you take something, it is then your responsibility to dispose of it responsibly. And if that's the trash, then that means it's going to the landfill if there's no other option for recycling or reuse. So be responsible, just say no. Buy in bulk. Look at how things are packaged. When things are packaged in bulk, there's usually a lot less packaging. Individual packaged items are going to create more waste. So looking at the packaging, seeing if it's something that can be recycled or if there's a way to purchase it so that there's less packaging. Also, cooking. When you cook, don't cook more than you're actually going to eat, or share it with a friend. If you have a friend or a coworker that you can share your food with, I'm sure they would appreciate an extra meal during the week. So just make sure you don't overcook, don't overbuy, buy what's on your list, and that's a great way to reduce your waste. And repair. If something is broken, do you have to buy something new, or can you possibly get it fixed? There's a lot of great how-to videos on YouTube now that you can look and see and fix it yourself. So look for that option. Also, Athens, Clarke County offers repair cafes where you can bring your items to us and we will do what we can to try to fix it. Next is reuse. Reuse and reduce play hand in hand. A lot of people kind of get them confused, but reduce is not bringing the waste into your life to begin with. Reuse is to use something again. Reuse, let's talk about that. So think about the No Straw campaign. That's gained huge momentum in the past couple of years, that people are saying no to straws. It's not the only reason you should say no to straws. Straws are a waste of resources. Do you have to have a straw when you drink? And also utensils. So both of those cannot be recycled. They both have to go in the trash. They're a single-use plastic that's used one time and then thrown away. Isn't necessary. So when you go to a restaurant or you get to-go food, you have the option of saying no. Again, here comes the say no. I don't need a straw. I don't need plastic utensils. I'm going home. So reusing the items that you have at home is a great way to reduce your waste. So using reusable straws and then your utensils that you have at home. Also, thrift stores are a great way for reuse, of course, clothing and all kinds of materials. And then there's Facebook that you can buy in the marketplace and buy things from other people that no longer have a use for them. So reuse is to use something again. So any way that you can use something again more than once, or buying an option that can be reused instead of a single-use product, is going to greatly reduce the amount of waste that you send to the landfill. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So that's what you're here to learn about today, is recycle. It is confusing, and we will admit it, and that's why we are here today to hopefully get some of the guesswork out of it, give you a little more comfort in your knowledge about recycling so that you're doing it properly and educating your friends, neighbors, co-workers on doing it correctly themselves. So what is recycling? Recycling is the process of converting waste materials into something new, a new material or object. That is why it's confusing, is because recycling means to turn something into something new, right? You can pretty much turn anything into something new. But what we need to think about with recycling is, one, someone has to be willing to do it, and it's going to cost money. So who is willing to pay for it? So those are kind of two things you got to think about when you're looking into something to see if it's recyclable, and can it be recycled. So thinking about the processing, which we're going to show you through our facility so you can see how things get sorted. If we can't sort it correctly, and get it to the places that will recycle, then it's not going to be recyclable. And if nobody is willing to recycle it, then it's not recyclable. Okay? So why? Why do we recycle? So we've talked about reducing waste, and we talked about that it's important, but why is that important? Where does our waste go to? So in Athens, Clarke County, our landfill is located at 5700 Lexington Road. That's where your waste goes to. And every day it gets 300 tons of trash, and that is going to fill up, right? It's a big hole in the ground, not super pretty. And the more trash we put in it, the more we're filling it up. And then the more landfills we're going to have to build and fill up with more trash. So the more we recycle, the less waste and the less that we're sending to the landfill. And then as we go into the next reasons why we should recycle, I like to show this little video that I found about how paper is made. So paper, a lot of people forget, comes from trees. So what resources do we need for paper? So we've got to grow the trees. We got to create the field. We use water. Machinery is used that's using gasoline and creating pollution. When the trees grow and are big enough, then they need to be cut down. So we're using more machinery, cutting down those trees, creating more pollution, using those resources to fuel the machines, gasoline, which comes from oil. Then when the trees are cut down, they go to a factory. They are cut to small wood chips. The wood chips are mixed with water and cooked into a paste. So we're using more water, more energy to create this paper. The paste is bleached and other chemicals are added to give the finished paper more strength. The paste is flattened and the water is squeezed out. The flattened paste is dried out and becomes paper. The strips of paper are cut into smaller sheets. But wait, paper can also be recycled to make more paper. Instead of using wood chips, used paper can be recycled into new paper. The paper is mixed with water and cooked into a paste. So we've eliminated the whole process of growing the trees and cutting the trees down. We already have paper and we can recycle it and turn it into new paper. Recycling paper saves the energy of growing, cutting, and processing the trees. Paper recycling also helps reduce CO2 emissions and landfill use. So as a summary, we save natural resources. So natural resources such as water and trees. Where does plastic come from? It comes from oil. What's the process to get oil? We have to extract it out of the ground. Aluminum, we mine that out of the ground. And then glass comes from sand. So we're using all those resources, natural resources, instead of materials that we already have. And then think about the machinery that's being used, using more gasoline and creating pollution to break these materials down. The process is much longer and requires more resources to go from the virgin material, the tree, to get it to paper, as opposed to recycling. It's going to be a lot shorter process. So reducing pollution, it's going to save energy because we're using less energy, right? Because the process is smaller, and saving water. The last reason we should recycle, a lot of people don't think about, is our economy. We actually create jobs with our recycling industry. For every job that's created for a landfill, there's 15 to 20 jobs created in recycling. Georgia has the second largest infrastructure for end use of recovered materials in the U.S. 120 manufacturers in Georgia are using recovered materials in manufacturing. All right, so what can we recycle? I like to break recycling into easy recycling versus hard recycling. What most people think about is easy recycling. That's your mixed recycling or single stream recycling. This is the recycling you have at your home or school or work, that you put your materials in a box and someone comes and collects it. That's your easy recycling. Easy because it's not hard for you to do it, and easy because most people think about it, and that's your easy recycling. Hard recycling are items that are hard to be recycled. Usually they have a separate process. They have to be handled separately. They could be dangerous if they go in the easy recycling. And usually there's separate programs for each individual thing. So thinking about ink cartridges, tires, scrap metal, batteries. You've probably seen programs for these different things, but it makes it a little bit harder because you're going to have to seek out those programs and find where you can send them to. In Athens, Clarke County, we are very fortunate because we have a center for hard to recycle materials. We call it the Charm. That's where you can take your hard to recycle items and get them recycled. So we're going to go over easy recycling first, and then we'll cover what materials can go to Charm in our hard to recycle center and get them recycled. So for your easy recycling, I like to break it down into 3 rules. So the number 1 rule is it has to be clean. So you've got to get any food out of it or it cannot be recycled. We call that a contamination. If there is food in your cans or on a greasy pizza box, that's contamination. And the places that are getting these materials, the manufacturing companies, do not want contaminated recycling. So number 1, it has to be clean. Now we're not saying it needs to go through a dishwasher and be sparkling clean, but it's got to be free of food. You've got to rinse it out. If it's something like peanut butter, then if you're not willing to take the time to get the peanut butter out, which would simply be some hot water and some soap and let it sit for a little bit and it'll get it out. Or if you have a dog, they're great at helping you get that last bit of peanut butter out. If you're not willing to do that, it needs to go in the trash. We'd rather it go in the trash than contaminate the recycling. So clean. Number 2 is it has to be a single material. So it needs to be one material altogether. So think about a Pringles can. Most people are familiar with a Pringles can. The tube itself is a cardboard tube, and then at the top and the bottom there's an aluminum ring and then an aluminum bottom. 2 different materials that are not easily separable. We can't separate that metal off of the paper. The paper mill does not want the aluminum, and the aluminum factory does not want the paper. And because we can't separate those 2 materials, we can't recycle it. So that's an example of something that is not a single material and cannot be recycled. Another example would be like a potato chip bag. See, sometimes this is where we get into the tricky part, is because sometimes things are hidden that you don't really know that it's more than one material. But think about a potato chip bag. The outside, there's several layers of plastic, and oftentimes it's different kinds of plastic. And then that inside layer is a layer of aluminum. So that shiny silver part is aluminum. You can't easily separate those. Those are melted together. And because of that, and for other reasons, potato chip bags are not recyclable. Same thing with pet food bags. It's paper with a plastic lining. So that's what you've got to think about when you're looking at something, if it can be recycled or not. Is it more than one material? And then the third rule is it has to be bigger than a Post-it note. Anything that's little is not going to make it through our facility. So scrap pieces of paper, shredded paper, lids, straws, utensils, they are not going to make it through the facility because they're smaller than a Post-it note. What happens is when the material comes through our facility, it goes through our glass crusher, and the glass crusher breaks the glass, and anything that is smaller than a Post-it note falls through that hole. So if you were to see our glass pile, it would be full of receipts, shredded paper, plastic lids, utensils, because all of those materials fall through the hole. So we want the larger materials to be recycled. Anything smaller is not going to make it through the facility. All right, so we're going to go through material by material, and at the end, we're going to have an opportunity for questions and answer if anything wasn't clear, and then maybe we'll do a little game. All right, so paper. Paper's pretty easy. Think about newspaper, if anybody gets that anymore, junk mail, magazines, soft cover books, but also cartons. We can also take milk cartons and juice cartons, even the little juicy juice cartons that the kids drink. And a new one for Athens, Clarke County is paper cups. So paper cups, again, they need to be clean, but coffee cups, fast food cups, those can all be recycled now in Athens, Clarke County. So all of your paper products, again, they need to be a single material, so you don't want any kind of plastic or aluminum hiding in there. Staples are fine, don't worry about that, but everything else, it just needs to be paper. and make sure that the milk carton is emptied and rinsed. Next is cardboard. So right now we have so much cardboard coming through our facility, as you can imagine. Everyone is ordering stuff and getting things shipped to their house, which of course is coming in a cardboard box. So make sure that you're recycling that cardboard, but don't forget about what we consider, it's called paperboard, the thinner cardboard boxes. So your cereal boxes, instant food, oatmeal, any of those boxes can also be recycled. Just make sure that they're clean, no food, and flatten them, please. Next is metals. So there's two different types of metals that we take. We take steel and aluminum. Now we're not talking about scrap metal, so we don't want your weed eaters and lawnmowers. We just want metal cans. Metal cans, that's it. So think about soda cans and carbonated beverages come in an aluminum can. We can also take aluminum foil if it's clean, and the aluminum trays, so like that you bake your turkey in for Thanksgiving. But again, free of food and clean. So if you're not willing to take the time to clean it, please throw it in the trash, but it can be recycled if it's clean. And then steel cans, so soup cans, any canned vegetables and fruits, empty those out, rinse them. The lid can go in the can and recycle that. You don't have to worry about taking the label off. And then also aerosol cans. Aerosol cans is one that surprises a lot of people, but hairspray, Ready Whip, even spray paint, as long as the can is empty. Now this is one exception. You don't have to rinse it because you can't. You can't really get into that aerosol can and empty it out or clean it out, but you can empty it. So make sure that it's empty. Take the lid off, and that can be recycled separately. But all your aluminum and metal cans can be recycled. Plastics. So plastics is the one I think a lot of people get tripped up on because so many things are made out of plastic. But what we are looking for is plastic containers. It has to have held something, some kind of bottle or food container. So plastic food trays and cups, plastic bottles, jugs, and containers, and rigid plastics also can be recycled. What you've got to look for on your plastics is that recycling symbol and a number. In Athens, we're very fortunate that we take all the numbers. So sometimes it's super tiny, you can't even see what it says, but we take 1 through 7. So as long as it's got that recycling symbol embossed on the plastic, then we can recycle it. Again, they just need to be empty and free of food, and they can be recycled. And a lot of people ask about the cap. Just leave the cap on, leave it on. But plastic cups and any of the to-go containers that are plastic, again, as long as they're clean. The only plastic container that we don't want would be styrofoam. It is considered a plastic and it does have that recycling symbol on it, but it cannot be recycled because it's not going to make it through our facility. So think about what's going to happen to styrofoam. If it goes through a lot of gears and compactor, it's going to get crushed. And we want that material to make it out of the facility in one piece. And styrofoam, unfortunately, is not going to make it out in one piece. It's going to come out in several different pieces. And last is glass. So again, we're talking about containers. We're talking about glass bottles and jars. That's it. We don't want windows or mirrors or any other kind of glass, just glass bottles and jars. You can take the lid off because usually the lid is either plastic or metal, and that can be recycled separately. But any of your glass bottles and jars, we'll take them. Some communities have quit taking them, but in Athens, we are still taking glass. So no matter what you've heard, you can still recycle your glass bottles and jars in Athens. Again, just make sure they are empty and clean. All right, so that's all the things that we do want in your easy recycling. These are the things that we don't want in your mixed recycling, single stream recycling. No plastic bags. Sometimes they do have the recycling symbol on them and they have a number, and so again that makes it confusing, but we want hard, rigid plastic. So that's going to be containers. Bags are going to get caught up in our machinery and can clog up the system and slow everything down or even stop it. So we do not want plastic bags. That also includes we don't want your recycling in a plastic bag. That slows down the process as well because our sorters will have to tear the bag open and get your recycling out. If it's in a black bag or a bag that they cannot see through, they don't know if that's trash or recycling, and they're not going to risk opening up somebody's chicken dinner and it get all over the recycling if it's in a black bag and they didn't know. So if it's in a black bag, it's just going to get trashed. So please keep your recycling loose. No shredded paper. Shredded paper goes with the post-it note rule. Smaller than a post-it note, right? When it goes through our facility, it's just going to fly everywhere because there's lots of spinning gears and conveyor belts, and it's just going to be a mess and impossible to sort. So our job at the recycling center is to sort the materials, and it would take forever to try to sort little pieces of shredded paper out with the paper. No food. We talked about that. Contamination, and that's just gross. With no food in the recycling, make sure that it is free of food. Styrofoam, again, will break into itty bitty little pieces, make it impossible for us to be able to separate it. It usually does have the recycling symbol on it as well. So that's, again, makes it confusing, but we do not want it in your easy recycling. No glassware, pots, or pans. Those are going to go under the mixed material rule. It's not a single material. There's usually different kinds of materials all in your glassware, pots, and pans. And glassware is a different kind of glass than what they use for your bottles and jars. No paper plates. Those usually cannot be clean, and our sorters don't have time to see if they're clean. They've had food on them, and the paper mill does not want paper plates or napkins. Also, no batteries. Batteries can be dangerous. They can explode in the recycling truck or at our facility, cause a fire. Hangers are a tangler. There are no wire hangers or plastic hangers. Those can get stuck in the gears and can cause problems. And light bulbs also, they will not make it in one piece to us, and they have a lot of chemicals and hazardous things that we do not want mixed in with the recycling. And then ceramics. So beginning, I talked about that there needs to be a market for it. Ceramics, just nobody wants them, so then they are not recyclable. If it is still usable, you could take those to a thrift store and they could probably sell them. But fortunately, a lot of the stuff that I just said that we don't want in our easy recycling, our curbside mixed recycling, can go to our Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. So they're hard to recycle for different reasons because they can get caught in the equipment or they're dangerous, but they can go to our Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, where we actually process the materials individually. So it's a whole different process than at the recycling center. So batteries, styrofoam, plastic bags, clothing, shoes, and fabric, light bulbs of any shape and size, ink cartridges, electronics. Our rule is basically if it's got a plug, we'll take it, and even shredded paper or documents to be shredded, tires, mattresses, tennis balls, golf balls, glasses. The list goes on and on. If you'd like to see more about what all we take at CHARM, you can go to our website, accgov.com/charm, and our whole list is up there, and we do update that as new materials come in because we just added glass. So we can take, I talked about we don't want any other glass with your bottles and jars and your easy recycling, but your automotive glass, mirrors, windows can go to CHARM and get recycled. So hopefully that helped clear things up for you about what can and can't be recycled. Just remember the 3 rules. It needs to be clean, has to be a single material, and needs to be bigger than a post-it note. And then we are looking for cardboard boxes, paper containers and boxes, aluminum cans, steel cans, glass bottles and jars, and hard, rigid plastic containers. That's it. That's all that can go in your single stream recycling. Anything else, you could look and see if it can go to CHARM, or if you're able to sell it or take it to a thrift store to get it reused. Thank you so much.